Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Marilyn Shannon, SkyWire, and all of my really juicy friends in the green room. And it's really nice to be back here after a week off of lots and lots of family things going on. And so I'm really delighted to be here today and to be talking about something that is profound, and yet we do it on a regular basis. And that is what this hangout is about. It's about taking these things that we do that we might take for granted, but are really so profound that when we listen, we find out things, we explore opportunities, we share information, and we grow, and the world just gets juicier and juicier. And I want to introduce to you our friends in the green room. So first we have Heidi, and then we have Elaine, and we have Gail, and we have Kaylani, and we have Katrina, and we have Sheila, who's in the comment track or stream things, and she's keeping things rolling there. We have Tracy, who couldn't be here today, but we send her our love. We have George, who couldn't be here today. We send him our love. And all of our friends out there, we send you our love as well. So let me ask each of those in the room to please share just a bit about themselves before we actually get into this topic of listening for, to, about our opinions. So let's start with Heidi. Heidi, tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, I'm Heidi, or Adelheid, and I'm living in Europe, in Italy, but I'm German. I am, very much connected with listening because a long time in my life I was a singer, musician, and listening is the main skill for being able to make good music, and to be in tune and to be together with the others. So it's one of the topics which are really very in my heart. And now I'm a coach and a counselor, and also there listening is a major skill. You really need to come into contact with people and to create relationships. And that's what it is about here in our show too, I think. So
perfect.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Elaine? Elaine, can you hear me? Okay, all right. We'll come back to Elaine. What about you, Gail?
Hi, Marilyn. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here today. I'm Gail Harris, and I'm a professional writer and author, and I specialize in writing books for others, which takes a lot of listening. And I have a memoir coming out in the fall that I co-wrote with another woman, and it is an amazing story. It's called Finding Zoe.
Terrific. Thanks, Gail. And Kaylani, all the way from Puerto Rico.
Good morning, everyone.
Can
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Again, good morning. This is Kalyani Roldan in sunny and hot and humid Puerto Rico at kalyaniRoldan.com. And I welcome them to claim the truth of who they are, ignite and align with their source energy so that they can thrive the simply extraordinary life that they came here to experience.
Thank you, Kaylani. Is anybody having trouble hearing her or just me? I want to make sure. Anybody? Okay. Katrina.
Hi there, my name is Katrina, and I'm a professional writer as well as a creativity consultant. And I really have a passion for helping people connect with that voice inside of them and express that creative sense in all that they do.
Thank you. It's always great to have you here, too, and we appreciate it. And my name is Marilyn Shannon, and I am a life and business coach. I host an online talk show. I've been doing that for 3 years, hosting this, SkyWire, all about listening. They call me the listener. I facilitate workshops and meetings, and I am the co-founder of a group of networking events for women. And I work with a lot of children, men, women, couples, and families. So it's really great to be here. And I am real passionate about listening. I think it is the kahuna of senses, the tool that bridges relationships, life, everything together. And it goes deeper and deeper, and we have no idea how deep we can take it, because it does reveal the meaning of life. So with that, Elaine, are you back with us? Can you hear us?
I can. I had one of those nasty echoes of another window open. I had to shut it down. So I am Elaine Nieberding from Bel Air, Maryland. My focus of operations is yeslaugh.com. I'm a holistic nurse and laughter yoga teacher, and my passion is helping people learn how to bless their messes so they can let their true self shine and bring their best self into the world.
Perfect. Perfect. And Sheila, as I said, is out in the comment stream, and Sheila teaches real estate. And I'm going to ask her if she will, in the comment area, to put a little bit more of a blurb about her, since she's not in the actual Hangout, because we want to hear from her. And everyone that's in there and listening and watching, welcome. And all of you that are tuning us in after this is recorded, we're delighted that you caught us anytime you can. So thanks for being here. So with that, the topic for today is opinion. And I want to start by just sharing one quote. And I love quotes. And if you watch my Hangouts, you'll see where I always post quotes, because I think that they're magnificent. And they really fine-tune some of what you want to say. And the quote that I want to share first is by Tim McGraw. Everyone should have their own opinion and be able to voice it, no matter what it is. Of course, that does not mean your opinion is always right, but you're certainly entitled to your opinion. And so with that, we're going to talk some about what an opinion is. But keep in mind, we're talking about listening. And so listening is what will reveal the opinion to ourselves. Listening is what gets it out. Listening is knowing when to share that opinion. So with that, I'm going to ask Heidi to start by sharing what she feels is the definition of opinion. Heidi?
Yeah, you are right. Listening is all. This is the basic thing of all. So for me, you listen into the world, you perceive what is coming to you, you listen into yourself, perceive what is coming up, and then you try to make sense out of that. You try to connect all these things, and out of that, you form your opinion about certain situations, about certain events, whatever it is. But first it is the gathering, through listening, seeing. I mean, you can also see, but this is a form of listening, of perception, of taking in. And then from there, create the connections and condense them as an opinion. This is what I think that opinion is.
That's perfect. Thank you for sharing. That's perfect. So, Elaine, what about you? What do you think opinions are?
Well, what I have to start with is that when I was looking at the word opinion, my wordplay muses started working with me. And I saw within the word opinion, or the letters of opinion, I saw the word onion. O-N-I-O-N. And it made me think about the layers of self that we have. And so in any given situation where we might be called on to share perspective, share an insight, if we're feeling into, what, can I touch the core of my onion, the core of myself? Can I remember that? And then what layer of myself, what level of perception might I express myself on, so that in the place that I'm in, or with the people that I'm in, my love can serve in the most helpful way. And if I'm paying attention, again, I'm listening on the inside, then I'll be coming from, hopefully, that most agendaless place of the ego, like wanting to be right, or wanting control, or wanting approval.
Onion. I'll have to remember, that's a really good thing, and it takes guts to share your opinion. It can be scary, and that's part of why we're talking about this, because we want to be able to listen to where our opinions are coming from, and with that comes courage. So that was really great, Elaine. Thank you. And Gail, I know like with what you're doing. I mean, you've had to step over the line, and part of what you're writing about is about sharing an opinion, right?
Yes, it is about sharing opinion. There's so much that we could say to it, say about it, even in terms of listening, because working with a deaf person for the last 5 years, I have a very different understanding about listening right now. But getting back to your original question about opinion, I would say that an opinion is our discernment, our feelings, our assessment on about a particular situation or a particular thought. And then, of course, there's so much more we could say, but that's my definition for now.
Perfect. And I see that Heidi has up a comment. Heidi, you want to read it to us? Heidi?
I was muted. Yeah, excuse me. It is the comment is from Sheila, and she says about herself, I'm a national online real estate instructor, owner of Real Estate Success Center. Oops, and now it's gone away. Let me see. Here it is. I help new candidates begin their real estate career, all online, and offer career counseling.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Katrina, what about you? How do you see opinions? And I know that in writing, oh my God, so much has to be based on your opinion.
Yeah, I think, I agree absolutely with all of what people have said so far, because that plays into a layer of opinion. There is that onion where we're all kind of getting closer to what that core is. But as a writer, I have to ask a lot of questions. And if I'm trying to get to a point where I can write for a person, I have to get my own opinions out of the way. So knowing the difference between, okay, if I'm creating a voice for someone in this space, is it their voice that I'm hearing, or am I putting my own voice in here? Am I changing this into something that may be my opinion or my voice? So I have found that through opinion, it's really about asking a lot of those questions fairly consistently. And then that way I'm getting a sense of, hey, I resonate with that. That is something that I agree with too. Or, you know what, I can see your point, but there's also this, have you thought about this angle? So I'm very balanced in that sense, I think, where I look at things very logically. It's taken a little time for me to sort of add in the more emotional element, only because as an empath, I was often getting a lot of input from that emotional space and kind of had to sort out where that was going. So I can talk more about that later, but it's been an interesting balance trying to work with the two.
I find it interesting what you said, Katrina, about kind of removing your opinion in order to ask a question. And I wonder if the underlying story or the underlying conversation that we have that helps form the question has something to do. It has to have something to do with our opinion. I mean, we don't want to manipulate, but we have to have some kind of basic something to go with, and that's got to come from some piece of our opinion. I imagine.
Yes.
So, what were we going to say?
I was agreeing with you. That's absolutely true. I think when you're writing, especially when it's not necessarily for yourself, it's really important to sort of be able to put yourself in another person's shoes. Think how they think and sort of look at their experiences in life and what brought them to where they are, so that it allows you to ask the questions from a more balanced space. But I agree with you. I mean, I think, we run across this issue in the news all the time. I went to school to get a master's in journalism, and I at some point contemplated being like a broadcast journalist. And it was right around that time where there was getting a lot more opinion in TV. Like Fox News was becoming huge, and there was a lot more editorial or opinion in a lot of what the news that was being reported. So I think it's that very fine line. I mean, even in the world that we're living in today, how much of what we're hearing is real news versus an opinion? How much of that is really true, straight-up facts versus someone else's interpretation of what those are? And as a journalist, I had to be very clear on that. It was really important to me that I was balanced in that space.
That's a very good point, because when you find the opinion, when you listened and you found the opinion, it's then important to listen to figure out where the opinion is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Is it coming from your head? You know, is it coming from your heart? And what is the difference between those opinions?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, the listening takes you on a road to say whether or not that opinion should be shared or not. So that's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So let's ask Kaylani now that she's back. Can you hear me, Kaylani?
I can hear you guys okay. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Now,
Am I
I
coming
know
through? Awesome.
Yes, perfect. And you very often talk about kind of certain things that are kind of like out of the box kind of stuff. And when you're out of the box kind of stuff, your opinions are also going to be like out of the box kind of stuff. So how do you define opinion? Hello? Okay. Well, let's
Some
go ahead.
synonyms for opinion are your thoughts, your ideas, your perspective, your the way that you view life, and everybody's opinion is going to have a tremendous influence from where they are personally in their life. Where are they in their personal growth? Where are they in their spiritual connection? That has an influence on an opinion. So for me, opinion is kind of a surface word. I like to view it more as, this is my perspective, because this is where I'm standing in my truth right now in my life. I could have a totally different opinion about this very same topic we're discussing right now than I would in a year or 2 years or even 30 days, because it's so highly influenced by where you are in your own growth of life and your understanding of life and your perspective and your perception. I mean, there's so much that comes in to create what's called an opinion. But I think that, you know, for me, back many years ago, I see opinion as something that often people give that they're not really thinking about what they're giving. They're just sharing at the moment in a conversation happening. And what I've learned in my journey over the years is that I don't find that I often have an opinion. I do like to speak my truth, but I don't find a need to have an opinion about something or in a discussion or whatever is going on at the time. It's more of, it goes back to listening, that sometimes we think maybe we always have to have our perspective shared, quote unquote opinion, when really it really comes down to just listen to what's going on at the time. And if you don't share your opinion, it doesn't mean that you're not speaking your truth, being in your truth. It just means that you don't always have to have something to say in order to make an impact and know or be the truth of who you are.
Okay, so that's a very interesting conception. That's an interesting perception. So what I hear you saying is that you can have your truth and hold it to you. And when you share a truth is when it can turn into an opinion. And you don't always have to share your truth. So you don't always have to have an opinion. Like stake in the ground. Like truth is truth, but when you share it, you're putting a stake in the ground. And you're giving, you're having an opinion about something. Maybe something different than somebody else. Is that what you, Kaylani, was that what you mean?
Yes, and to add to that, what I'm saying, because I don't want it to come across as though I'm saying people should not speak up for themselves. I just think that the more grounded and centered we are within ourselves, the less we may find that we need to voice our quote-unquote opinion all the time, because sometimes it may not be centered in your truth. Sometimes we just get ignited by a topic that's being discussed and we feel like we've got to share an opinion about it, and that's okay. Those kind of things are important too. But I'm saying that I personally feel like the more I've gotten grounded in myself, the less I feel a need to necessarily always be expressing some kind of opinion on something.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's excellent. Terrific. Okay, so Heidi has a comment up. Heidi, you want to read that to us?
It is George Green who says he's still unable to debug his audio gremlins, and he will be rocking here in the comments. And so I asked him to define his opinion, and also Shayla, if they could write us what they think, what opinion is.
Oh, that was beautiful. Perfect. That's great. I look forward to hearing what George has to say and what Sheila has to say. That's great.
Marilyn?
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I'd like to add to something that Kalyani was just saying when she was talking about opinions and not needing to express her opinion. And when it made me realize that, in a way, when a person has an opinion, very often it's loaded, or they have a stake in that opinion, you know, so that it's not a neutral stance that they're taking. And I think that may be the difference at what Kalyani was saying, and you could correct me, Kalyani, but you can have a perspective about something. You can use the word opinion, but that doesn't mean that you're necessarily, you have anything at stake in it. You could say it or you don't have to say it. But a lot of times when people have to give their opinion, you know, they're very invested in it. And I think that's where some of the trouble comes in, when people are really invested in their opinion.
Gail, that's a really good point, because sometimes we tend to feel like sometimes people are opinionated. And that's how so many times, that's why I love talking like this and sharing with all of you like this, because we're taking things that have been kind of poo-pooed because, you know, like getting a bad rap. When you know the difference, when we listen for the difference, and we listen to how to really, like, break it down, then opinions are great and can be welcomed when they're said and expressed in a certain way, and we get to have an opinion. We don't have to allow the word opinion or that experience action of having an opinion be bad because of all the other opinions that came forward first. So really good point. And I also want to say to all of you in here, please feel free at any point in time to interrupt, because we're going to hear different things. I might hear something different than somebody else is going to hear. And I want to, you know, welcome all of you to be sure to bring up what you hear, because, you know, just like they say, you know, 2 heads are better than 1. Well, 20 years are better than 2. So let's make sure we bring it up. Heidi.
Yeah, I would like to say, I would like to say we cannot not have opinions. We have opinions all the time, but it is the question, what type of opinion? Because opinion is whatever the conclusion is, we detract from the inputs we take. But if we use the opinion as a sort of information, and we use it to tell what we think about the things in an open way, or what Kalyani said, if we use it as a battlefield, you know, this is right, then it's a different thing. And I think the opinion is not so much the problem, but what we want to do with it and how we use it. If we fill it up with emotions, and if we are attached to it, or if we are still able to continue to listen after we have formed an opinion, because the opinion can change when we continue to listen. But if it is fixed now, this is my fixed opinion, then it becomes very, let's say, dangerous to create conflict.
That's a really, really good point. What is attached, what's in that opinion changes how, and that's where listening comes in. I mean, if you hear an attachment, you know, you got to listen beyond the attachment to see, you know, what is this and how do I express this? And by using our words really helps. That's a really good point. Before I go back to Heidi, because Heidi and I chatted about something earlier that we want to bring up. Anybody have any other final words at this moment?
I do. I just wanted to point out really quickly that a lot of times when you're listening to someone maybe that you haven't met before, and they maybe come on a little strong, their opinions can force you to make a choice about them very immediately, where you may not know on there, and they're just nervous or a little uncomfortable, or maybe they've kind of been having an uncomfortable day. So I think it's really important to sort of listen to a person for a while and make sure that, you know, as Kalyani said and some of the other people on the panel have said as well, is just be grounded in who you are and don't let other people's opinions or ideas necessarily change your grounded space or your sense of thinking about something. I mean, certainly entertain it, but try not to let that sort of throw you off your balance.
Exactly. And I posted the Steve Jobs quote, "Don't let the noise of others' opinion drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary." So, you know, sometimes people are louder than you, you know, and that doesn't mean that there's it doesn't have to be a challenge. And just to be true to yourself and to hold on to who you are. So Heidi has another comment. Heidi, rock and roll.
Yeah, this is a comment from Sheila. She says, "My opinions are formed by other statements combined with my experience with a subject. They are almost always further defined by another person's words and expressions. I try to keep an open mind."
Well, and that's perfect because that goes right into something that Heidi and I kind of chatted about earlier about making assumptions. Because you can't have, if you're making assumptions, you don't have an open mind. So Heidi, you want to bridge that link together?
Yeah, I was suggesting that because 2 hours before we talked in a hangout about assumptions. And assumptions is, I would say, it goes even further than opinion. Opinion is one thing, and assumptions is when the opinion is fixed, as we were talking before, no? When you cannot listen anymore, when your opinion has become a truth. And these assumptions, when you encounter other people with assumptions, you are not listening anymore. You are not perceiving the other person anymore, but you are sort of projecting your own assumption on the other person. And this creates problems. So I wonder what you think the difference of assumptions on and opinions. In the meantime, we have here a comment from George Green. I wonder if I should bring it on the screen before, or would you like to answer to that?
Well, you make that determination based on the question. Do you think we should bring it up, or we should go on and then come back to it? What do you think?
I think it is quite a complex thing. I can read it. You know, okay. George, you are a man. Oh, it's fine. There's a difference between sharing an idea and offering an opinion. In today's culture of division and polarity, opinions are charged with adversarial energy and also perceived as oppositional. I made this remark to you, George, because I see so many words in here, so many loaded words with so many meanings. Then it continues. Open exchange of ideas and perspectives from a place and space of receptivity and curiosity can be quite generative. Unfortunately, it's all too human to be invested in being right rather than learning and expanding your worldview. So right.
Okay, that's a big thing, and I think that's well written. So thank you, George. I like to call him Georgie. I don't know if anybody else does, but thank you, George, for adding that. So there is a difference between sharing an idea and offering an opinion. I'm curious what the difference, what, George, you think the difference is between an opinion and an idea, because they can both be the same. It's just maybe, and maybe it depends on how much energy or attachment you have based on either one. But I think that's an interesting perspective on the two. And we are invested very much in being right many of the time, and that's when the opinion is full of conflict. And when we want to be right, we want to be righteous. So I think that's an interesting point. So we've had several different things going on. We've talked about making assumptions. We've talked about fear. We've talked about the difference between opinion and ideas. We've shared, different perspectives here, all leading to, some of this open dialogue. So I'm curious, this idea of assumption, if we listen to the assumption, that will help guide our opinion or how it comes out, I also believe. So who else has something to share in summarizing and taking what we're talking about into, maybe a similar place, but maybe something different? Any of you? Elaine, I thought.
Yeah, I'll go on.
Okay.
The idea that's been swirling around in my brain is this whole idea of when we're in conversation with another, are we clear on whether we have an ego investment in being right, or do we want to be happy? So George was talking about the difference between sharing an opinion or giving an opinion and sharing an idea. And to me, if you're sharing an idea, it's more coming from, again, that grounded place of your own experience, your own perspective, your own truth, without the ego investment and attachment to persuading another person, getting approval. In other words, you're offering it, and maybe it'll be a seed that lands and will bear fruit later, and maybe it won't. Maybe it will in the immediate moment, or maybe it won't. You're just standing in your own truth, and maybe curious to see what happens next.
Perfect. One of the greatest things about this HOA is that you really got to listen to be a part of this, because there's so many interesting perspectives and turns of words that we are all listening intently to hear these concepts. And so I really honor all of you for doing this, because I know this is really training us to be the best listeners that we can possibly be. And I see that Heidi has another comment. So Heidi, you want to read that?
Yes, it is from Sheila. She said, I find assumptions tend to cloud my perception of what the other person is trying to convey. And then there is another one, the answer by George Green. The difference is what energy and agenda comes with the sharing. We were talking, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I would say that if you have an agenda, it's more about, maybe that's more wrapped up in your opinion as opposed to just an idea whose time has come. So that's great. Gail, were you on?
Yes.
Did you have something? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to make sure that Cheryl Deuce's comment got spoken. But what I was going to say is that I think that whenever we give an opinion, we're making a lot of assumptions. And I think we're throwing words around. It's a lot of words, like you were just saying, Marilyn. There's opinions and assumptions. And I think that there's nothing wrong with having an opinion or an assumption as long as you are open. So it gets back to what George was saying. What's the energy behind it?
Right, and it's always about the energy behind it. Always about the energy.
Yeah.
Gail, Heidi, is that from Sheila again?
No, this is from Cheryl Deuce, and it's an answer to Sheila, and I think it's really nice. I really try to avoid forming opinions and focus mostly on forming feelings. I worry that this minute you form an opinion, it's like getting on a train track, and you can only go where the track takes you. With feelings, you act in the moment and go where you are guided to. I believe it is important to keep the mind and heart open. It's wonderful.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you very much. All these comments are really extraordinary. So that's really excellent. It's an interesting thing to discuss the difference between having a feeling and having an opinion. That's a really interesting perspective. And is there a difference? And does it change? I mean, maybe the kind of opinions that people say keep to yourself, you know, nobody's interested, are the opinions that are not the kind of opinions I want to talk about. I want to talk about the kind of opinions you should have. You know, I want to talk about the kind of opinions that is going to be an invention, you know, that's going to, you know, add a piece of something to something that makes a difference in the world. That's the kind of opinion that I love. So,
hey, Marilyn.
Yeah, go ahead.
Marilyn, Cheryl ended her her little comment with talking about remaining open, and that's the key thing. If we're engaging in a relationship, a communication relationship with another person or a group, do we check ourselves for how open we are to hearing and listening to others? And I'm going to throw in another wordplay thing for people here. If you rearrange the letters in open, O-P-E-N, you can get it nope. You're either open, yes, or you're not. And it just pays to check in with yourself. How really present am I? And sometimes that's it. We're noticing, am I really present? Or are my thoughts scattered? And if my thoughts are scattered and then I'm responding, my response might be coming from a less than mindful place.
Elaine, do you come up on these things your own, or have you seen these somewhere?
I have wordplay muses, yes. And this is the thing that makes my work sometimes helpful. Little zingers to remember.
Absolutely. Oh, fabulous. This is important. I mean, you could change one word from one thing to another, and the energy might feel the same, but the word change could be entirely different. So that's brilliant. Thank you for that. I see that we have another. Okay. Yes, go. Great.
Oh, I wanted to talk and add a little bit onto what Elaine was saying, is that if you're sort of feeling into the moment, then how does that affect an opinion that may need to be expressed but you're scared? Because there's a lot of things in life that are scary to say, or you're trying to take a stand and it's very important for your own personal growth and development. So in that space, knowing the difference between, I may say this and things may never be the same after that, and how do you feel about that? Are you okay with expressing it anyway? And so I think when you have an opinion or an assumption, it's really important to be clear on, yes, I'm very grounded in what this is expressing, and I need to say it, because if I don't, then I'm not actually being true and honest to the core of who I am. And it's not always easy to express your opinion, especially if it's with someone that you are very involved with, and it may cause you feel pain, or if it's an expression in a larger group of people that may or may not accept what you're sharing. So I think it's important to sort of think about that fear that's related to sharing your opinion as well.
Yeah, you have to, sometimes you have to ask permission to share your opinion. You know, sometimes you have to say, you know, is it all right if I tell you how I feel? Is it all right if I, give you my opinion? And if somebody is, they are, and if somebody isn't, they're not, and they don't always say if they say yes, they may really mean no. And if they mean no, they really mean yes, and you have to listen to how that is coming across to know where you stand in that.
Right.
It can be extremely complicated, and yet, it's brilliant how it works.
Mm-hmm.
The other quote I had shared was how to dare to have an opinion, because, like I said, it takes being okay with sometimes being out on that skinny branch all by yourself, where somebody may not agree with you today, but maybe next week they wake up and they do agree with you, and it's being okay with that too.
Mm-hmm.
So Heidi, I see that you have another comment.
Yeah, this is a comment on my sharing my opinion on speech language, which normally men and women use. I think there is often a difference, not always. So George Green is sharing, gender has no bearing upon sharing either ideas or opinions, with the exception of how that sharing is perceived and or filtered by the listener. I agree and not agree. So I think we'll do a whole hangout on this topic.
On which part of this? Tell me which part of this you think we could do one on.
On the gender is no difference. I think gender is very much defined of our cultural patterns, and there are differences in how men use words, often more abstract. I see it in many groups where I am, and women use words much more in relationship to themselves. Doesn't mean that men don't do it, you know, but it's sort of, I found a lot of abstract words in your share, and that was what what was the reason why I said, oh, I see, this is a man under so many women here. Excuse me if I have offended you in some way. Didn't want to.
Well, this is a perfect example. Hello world. This is a perfect example of how sharing opinions, sharing ideas, feelings, expression. This is what's going on, what always goes on in here is a perfect expression of sharing ideas, opinions, differences, different word choices. This is how it can be without, having a conflict. Everything about an HOA is an opinion. Everything that we do, every topic is an opinion. And I would like to just add something to what Heidi said and to George as far as the gender. I think some things about gender is learned from one gender to another, from one male to another male. But when you knock it down to the energy and you bring it down to the soul, maybe there's no difference. But women learn from women, men learn from men, and I think that's where things get dicey and change. But when you knock it down, when you take a look at what's the other part, the part that has no agenda, has no gender, we're all the same. It's just how we use it, and that's what we learn. And so listening to that and knowing that becomes really clear. This is really interesting. So where do we want to go next? Into what do we want to go next? Into what piece of this would we like to go next?
Marilyn, I'm
Yes.
piping up again. A little while back, you were saying something like, sometimes it's appropriate to ask, would you like my opinion? Would you like my help? Often we're in circumstances where someone is going through something difficult or traumatic, and they're venting. Sometimes they're venting, but they're really not asking for help. But often we offer it because we want to feel good. Maybe we'll have, an interesting insight. So it is sometimes important to ask. Or if we are offering a perspective, sometimes it might be helpful to say, well, if I were in your circumstance, what I might do is blankety blank. In that way, sharing a perspective or an opinion. But anyway, I'm getting back to sometimes it's important to ask, do you want my opinion? Do you want my help or my perspective?
Yeah, and to be ready for the answer. And at least to be listening helps us to be ready. Listening says, well, if they don't want it, just like what we talked about earlier with Kehlani, if they don't want it, we're not attached. We don't have to be attached. It's our truth. Maybe somebody's not ready for our truth. And maybe they're not ready today. And to listen to how we're asking. If we turn around and we say, well, can I share my opinion with you? Well, what do you think is going to happen? You listen to that. But if you listen to, is it all right? Do you mind? Can I share my, share a thought with you? How you say it is going to mean a lot more, and listen to how we're showing up. I think the world needs opinions. Mm-hmm. It just needs opinions that are in a good place. We need to grow. We need problem solving. We need opinions, but we need them to be in check. We need them to be the best opinions they can be, coming from the best place. Kaylani, did you want to add something?
I do, actually, because I got a lot coming up around this whole thing. I think for me personally, I'm a big language believer. So I think what's happening is that for me, when I hear the word opinion, it like came up some time ago, it seems to have a very charged energy. Like, I have an opinion that I don't like horror movies. And I think that they put a lot of crap into your head when you watch them and they make you scared. That's an opinion to me. That's just like, it's not a truth. It's not an insight. That's just my opinion. I don't like them for those reasons, so I don't watch them. For me, I think everybody has a voice, and everybody is here to share their voice and whatever message they came to the planet to share. It's the word opinion that just doesn't work well for me. It feels so like if I'm sharing an opinion, it's because I've got some sort of energetic charge behind what I need to say right now, and what I want is something back from that I'm voicing. So, for example, you know, I would say in parenting, opinions probably come up a lot. And going on just something so simple like, you know, the movie topic, I have an opinion about violent style movies. Now, it's an opinion, but at the same time, I feel insightful, and it's a truth for me that I don't like them because I think they are a low energetic vibration. But I'm not in my son's body, and I'm not in his truth. So I can share with him my perspective, which could be called an opinion. I don't know. That word bothers me. But I'm not, as a parent, trying to tell him, my opinion is this, therefore that means you need to respond to it with an okay of follow what my opinion is. I'm giving you my opinion or my insight or my truth about what I experienced from that genre of movie. I want to share that with you. You can do with it what you will. That's my voice. I feel like I'm sharing my voice at that moment as a parent. That's part of what I agreed to do being a parent when I came here. So I shared my voice, but it wasn't for the intention to, in a nice way, tell him you can no longer watch those kind of movies. And that's what an opinion feels like to me when we're expressing them, is that we have an intention that the other person is either going to agree with us, is going to change their action, is going to change their perception. We're sharing it as though we need something back, and that's the distinction that I wanted to make. For me, I'm not saying it's that way for everybody, but for me, it feels like that word carries that energetic resonance and vibration with it that says, I need you to do something that's going to feed back this opinion I'm sharing. And for me, I choose to share insights that feel like they're coming from my truth of my own perspective and interpretation, and what I've intentionally and deliberately put myself here to learn while I'm on the planet. That's when I'm sharing insights and value, and I'm just sharing it. It's because that's my voice. I don't need anything back from it. That's where I feel it follows what your quote from Steve Jobs is saying, is that you are here to share your voice, and you absolutely should. I don't know if we're all here to share an opinion, but that's because I have a different vibration around the word.
And that's really okay. I mean, you have a different experience with the word opinion as somebody else might. And so this is what's great about having an opinion. You know, I mean, I know that my daughter was mad at me last week because I gave her an opinion about something. Not that she had to do it. And she placed too much emphasis on my opinion. Mm-hmm. So instead of just letting it go, she was frustrated because she made an assumption about my opinion. I didn't make an assumption about my opinion. Here's an opinion. Take it or leave it. She put too much emphasis and assumption on my opinion, and that caused her to be upset with my opinion. You know? So, great points. And I see Heidi, and I want to mention that Tracy, I don't know if she's still there, but Tracy is out in the comment stream checking in. And Tracy, if you have anything to add, you know, whatever it is, you're not too late, because this conversation has so many ripple effects and so many different points that wherever you come in, it's perfect. Whatever perspective you bring in is perfect. So thank you, Kehlani, for that, because that just charged me. Great. And I see Heidi has a comment. Heidi.
Yeah, I have a comment from Sheila, which was put out in a different moment of the talk, but I think it is fitting well here too, because with your example that you say you only express your opinion and your daughter sees it as an assumption that she has to act accordingly to the opinion, that could, in your part, lead to what Sheila says, a fear of expressing an opinion. It was directed to Katrina before. So, yeah. Very interesting.
Get ahead, Heidi. What were you going to say?
I was saying it's very interesting that it can lead, when we, assumptions and opinions, when we, out of opinions, we create assumptions, or the other person creates assumptions, then it can lead to the fear of expressing an opinion, because we fear repression when we or expectations or whatever it is, you know, but some fear of, and then we get silent. And I mean, as women, we have a long history of that, actually.
Right.
To bring in gender again.
Yeah, and this is why we listen. This is why we're talking about listening on all of these levels, so that, I mean, listening to ourselves, to listening to the recipient. I mean, I listened to the fact that my daughter had this, attachment as my daughter to my opinion. Now, I didn't ask her for it, right? So I listened to this, and then I can work on, like, kind of smoothing it out, or, you know, fixing it somehow, or making it better. So, really cool. Okay, so going down the line, Gail, we haven't heard from you in a bit. What about you? And then Katrina, I want you to share some things. But go ahead, Gail. What about you?
Okay. I think this maybe is a way to sum up, in a sense, what a lot of us have been saying, that I think that our egos have opinions. They have opinions, and they need to express it. But who we really are, our true self, we may have a need to express our truth and how we're feeling at that time. And so I think it's just a distinction between that word, opinion, and whatever else. It depends which part of us is expressing it.
Yeah, makes perfect sense to me. Terrific, thank you. And Katrina?
Well, there's a theme that you guys have been mentioning in the last few comments, but we haven't really touched on, is the fact that you're sharing an opinion with your family versus at work. Cheryl, you had kind of brought this up in a comment as well, is where are you at when you're sharing opinions with the people that you love the most in your own family versus in a work situation, and how to handle that. And I can only speak really quickly on my own situation. I come from a family of yellers. Not necessarily angry people, but if they wanted their opinion heard, they just talked over you. They just talked louder. So it was a little interesting getting out in the regular world and realizing, like, yeah, not everyone's down with that. Not everyone's okay with that kind of delivery mechanism when you're learning to connect with other people outside of your home. So I think when you're looking at that space in how you've been brought up, like where do those things start? How did you learn to form opinions? Like where does that come from? Or were you not really allowed to share your opinion? Most of the time as an empath, I would kind of listen to everybody else's opinion and be like, well, I could fight on this, or I could just kind of let it go. And a lot of times I just didn't really feel like fighting, so I just kind of let it go. But everyone's got their own dynamic in their family and how that sort of branches out in terms of how they connect at work or connect with other people in their life.
Yeah, perfect. Good point. And I think, getting back to a little bit of what Heidi brought up about making an assumption. You listen to something, you have an assumption. You can then form an opinion and share that opinion, or you can listen, have an assumption, and ask a question, then form an opinion. But when you listen, and you get to the level of listening that we are working on, then assumptions are not assumptions. I don't think. I'm not sure. I think when you really are listening, then you're not making assumptions because you're listening. And listening takes you to a place that there's no reason to make an assumption. You just ask the question. which kind of bypasses or doesn't even create an assumption that's ego-driven when you listen. Does that make sense? Anybody? Okay, we'll come back to that, but
no, to me it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense because assumptions, to avoid assumptions, you do it by ask questions. Is it really so for you? I think or perceive that it might be so, and you ask. And then give the other person the possibility to talk about their reality. And then it's you listening. And reverse assumptions, don't make them appear at all, but you can reverse opinions by listening to what the other person has to say about what you think. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, and this word about reversing, this is a very important concept, because not being attached, being able to reverse, being able to change what you're saying, be able to, add something else, to be able to be not attached to being right, and changing, being able to listen and hear this and gather information, being able to reverse is really important. And no ego there, Gail, right? That's an egoless place to be. So when you do it from your heart. So we only have a few minutes left. So I want to talk a little bit about next week and just, checking in about going forward, and anybody else in the common stream having any other comments that they want to add, in summarizing anything, any ahas that you've had, please feel free to comment to us. We'd love to answer them. If you're hearing this and you watch this after the fact, it's never too late to write a comment. These shows are alive forever. They're in the can. They're real. And we will always, any one of us will always address a comment. And we can continuously learn from each other, even after the show is not quite done, but the recording is over. But it stays alive. So any final comment on anything that we've chatted about? Heidi?
I think I have said a lot today. I find it
Perfect.
a very, very important topic, and I would love to talk about it more.
Good, perfect, thank you. Elaine?
I'm going to reconnect back to Heidi, whose discussion all morning was about assumptions and assume. I'm going to do a little more wordplay again. You break apart assume, and you've got, let me not just look at things as me, but let me dare to be willing to look at things as you.
Perfect. That's
and
great.
Then, allow the flow of communication, exchange, be curious, allow those depth of connections to be experienced.
That's it. That's what we're here for. Gail?
Yeah, I'll just add that I don't think that assumptions are bad per se. I think we make assumptions all the time. It's just a natural part of being alive. And I think that when we have opinions, that they're based on assumptions. We probably, half the time, we don't even know it's the assumptions that we have made that made us have that particular opinion. It's just,
okay.
Are we attached to them? Are we open to hearing other people's opinions? Are we open to moving forward? That's the bottom line.
Perfect. I hear you. And Kaylani, what about you?
Yeah, I'll just close with my experience has been that when we turn assumptions and opinions into discussions, questions, and conversations, we all get an experience to grow.
Right on, sister. Katrina, what about you?
I would just like to point out, in terms of listening, I think of it as a practice. So you get out into the world and you practice listening in a certain way, and how you interpret opinions or maybe deal with assumptions changes over time. So as long as you're willing to be in practice with it and watch how the flow goes, then you're constantly learning and opening yourself up to new experiences.
Absolutely, and that's what we're doing together. We are we have a practice going on together, and then we take it out, and then we bring it back, and then we create new opportunities and new listening. So that's perfect. So I want to thank everybody for being here today and everybody listening. Next week we're going to have a special guest. Sue Ashton is going to be joining us, and we're going to be talking about listening to nature. And we're going to be talking about how she gets inspired by nature, how she listens to nature, and how she takes that into her music, and what that does, how you listen. And we're going to be talking about those experiences and how we each have those types of experiences as well. So be on the lookout for the next SkyWire event to be posted, new quotes. Please comment and come back next week. And with that, everybody, ciao. Thank you.